Now, we're joined from Madrid by Richard Fitzpatrick. The Cristiano Ronaldo story about an allegation that he raped a young woman in Las Vegas in 2009. The case has been reopened by the Vegas police, and there is a document that's circulating in which it is alleged Cristiano Ronaldo makes some admissions. Richard Fitzpatrick is an Irish journalist working there, and he is following this story. Richard, initially, when this story broke a couple of weeks ago, the Spanish press gave it very little space. I think El País, a newspaper there, a very respected newspaper, gave it a little show, but not much coverage in Marca and the big football papers. That's changed, has it?
It has indeed, yeah. I remember that morning that the kind of story broke. Der Spiegel ran a long interview with the woman who's making the allegation of rape on a Saturday, the last Saturday in September. And on that Monday, El País, for example, as you mentioned, they just ran an Associated Press story, just a press release basically on it. There was very little take-up, and that was the same case. I was talking to colleagues in Italy and Portugal on that Monday. But later in the week, this story began to gather momentum, particularly when Nike, Ronaldo's sponsors, came out. They were extremely worried about the allegations. EA Sports, another one of his big sponsors, were similarly concerned, and he pulled out of the Portugal squad. So by the time the weekend came around, that first weekend about 10 days ago, all the papers were covering up the story, writing opinion pieces on it. Since then, there's been some strange developments just from a media perspective. For example, last week, Real Madrid announced that they were going to sue a Portuguese newspaper which claimed that they pressurised Ronaldo at the time of the alleged rape and the mediation that went on afterwards. They claimed that this Portuguese newspaper claimed that Real Madrid pressurised Ronaldo into making a settlement. So that's one of the unusual developments as part of the sideshow of this whole episode.
Yes, because one of the facts that gave this story legs was that it appeared clear that Cristiano Ronaldo had made a settlement of $350,000 with this young woman, and that sort of implied, I suppose, a measure of guilt. Is it true now to say that Ronaldo and his people are saying that it was Real Madrid who pressured him into making that settlement, lest there be any adverse publicity?
No, they haven't made any statement in that regards. That's just been left lie at the moment. The big developments from the Ronaldo side is that they've slowly began to publicly accept that there was a non-disclosure agreement signed between Ronaldo and Catherine Mayorga, the woman who alleges the rape, back in January 2010. This is a big admission. They've moved from their position. The original Ronaldo statement on the episode claimed that the whole thing was fake news. He's backtracked considerably from that. Now the Las Vegas Police Department, in an interview last week with the Portuguese newspaper, have said that they're looking to interview Ronaldo. So that'll be a very interesting development to see what happens there. But Ronaldo's team have definitely changed their position, and they made the quite bold statement, his legal team, last week in alleging that the documents at the heart of the story were doctored. Just to fill in your listeners, the root of this whole story traces back to Football Leaks documents, which were leaked in 2015, 2016. Der Spiegel ran with these leaked stories, these leaked documents, that put in an extraordinary effort to piece the story together. They published the original story, which was the exact same facts we have today, back in April 2017. But nobody picked up on the story around the world. It was extraordinary. I checked back a week or so ago about the coverage in Spain, for example. There was next to nothing covered about it. What changed between when they published that story in 2017 and September 2018, a couple of weeks ago, was that they were able to put a face to the story. Catherine Mayorga, the woman who allegedly came out and did a long interview with them. So immediately the public could pick up on her, put a human face on the story, and it's just growing and growing now.
Yes, and we should say or note that Der Spiegel is a highly respected German magazine, and there's no question that they would be doing this for sensationalism. The other intriguing fact here, Richard, is the football leaks, which is a sporting equivalent or a football equivalent of WikiLeaks, and Julian Assange and all of that. And the person who has leaked these documents is a young Portuguese journalist, as I understand it.
Yeah, it's you've made a good parallel there between football leaks and WikiLeaks. They're very, very similar. And the guy, the mastermind behind football leaks, is a similar type of character to Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, a typical whistleblower. He's a romantic. He's Portuguese, born in Lisbon. He's still on the run. He's been on the run for the last 3 years from different kind of enemies, real or imagined. He has documents from Russian mobsters, Kazakhstan mobsters, talking about how they need to take care of him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of his leaks have been about performance-enhancing drugs and that kind of skullduggery.
Yeah, the big focus for him, the big agenda, is to bring in more transparency into the world of football and how its business is conducted. Most of the leaked stories that Der Spiegel and a network of 12 media organisations in total around Europe have run with have been about tax avoidance. So they built up their stories, did the research in 2016. This guy John handed over the documents in early 2016 to this network. They launched those stories on December 3rd, 2016, the day of a Clásico, interestingly enough, between Barca and Real Madrid in Barcelona. And that unleashed a wave of criminal investigations. It's a who's who of the football stars in Europe. Mesut Ozil, Alexis Sanchez, Toni Kroos. Ronaldo was the big case at the time. So 8 different national tax authorities went to Der Spiegel and their partners in this investigative collaboration unit, looking for those documents to back up their investigations. So there was a lot of settlements. Jose Mourinho as well just recently made a settlement.
Also, Lionel Messi has made a settlement. I understand that Neymar and or his father, who is his agent, they have also made settlements, and Ronaldo, I think, also has made a revenue settlement.
He has. Ronaldo, for example, there are parallels between his position now and this alleged rape case and the tax avoidance. He came out, he was very brazen at the start, saying there was nothing to see here, denied any wrongdoing. He was very confident going into a court hearing in a tiny little court outside Madrid. But he backtracked, he admitted guilt, he ended up with a suspended jail sentence, and he paid a penalty of about 19 million to the Spanish tax authorities. Interestingly, you mentioned Neymar. Football leaks are sitting on a mountain more of these documents and these leaks. And this guy, he calls himself John, the whistleblower behind Football Leaks. He says the two areas he's going after now are Qatar and Paris, as in Paris Saint-Germain, and that Neymar transferred to Paris Saint-Germain in 2017. So there'll be more interesting stories to come from this Football League source.
Now, Richard, the question about Ronaldo, it is claimed, or was claimed, that the documents leaked have him admitting that the woman involved in Vegas had repeatedly said no at a certain point, and this is him saying it, although when she tried to resist, he didn't stop. Is there any doubt about the authenticity of that document?
Yeah, this is the big sticking point. It's if we take it on face value, it's very incriminating for Ronaldo. There's a questionnaire that was floating around in September 2009, about 3 months after the alleged incident, where Ronaldo was consulting with his legal team in Portugal. They had a questionnaire for him. He filled out answers, and in those answers he admitted that she had said no several times, and had tried to get him to stop, and afterwards he apologised. He made a subsequent questionnaire with his legal team 3 months later in December 2009, where he changed his position and said that the sex was consensual. So these documents are a battleground now between the two legal teams. You ask if they're I guess false or not. This is what Ronaldo's legal team have claimed last week. We can only go on the evidence of previous investigations by the likes of Der Spiegel. You mentioned earlier, they're a very reputable news organisation. They made their name for themselves back in the 50s and 60s, breaking big political scandals in Germany, scandals that were keeping Adenauer awake at night. They were one of the forerunners with the WikiLeaks publications in 2010, and again with the Edward Snowden documents in 2013. So they have a huge process involved in covering these leaked stories. They've lawyers, international legal experts, tax experts, fact checkers. They would have all their ducks in a row before they go to publish a story. Ronaldo, for example, his legal team threatened they dismissed their story when they published about his tax avoidance, said it was journalistic fiction. As we mentioned, Ronaldo ended up pleading guilty to that tax avoidance. So there is a kind of a history or a trajectory there,
yes,
that would be troubling for Ronaldo's team.
Now, his $1 billion lifetime contract with Nike is on the line, but more importantly, justice for this woman is the more serious question. As I understand it, the police in Las Vegas have reopened the case. Is that the case? And if it is, where will this be litigated, Richard? In Spain or in the United States?
Yeah, the Las Vegas Police Department reopened the case 2 days after Der Spiegel published their interview with Catherine Mayorga. So that criminal investigation is ongoing. It's being carried out in Las Vegas. They will look to interview Ronaldo. That could be face to face in Nevada, or it could be by video conference or by a series of drafted questions and answers. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. The civil case is running in tandem. Again, that's in Nevada. The police also will be looking to analyse a DNA sample. Catherine Mayorga, the day after the alleged incident, was checked out in hospital. There's evidence, photography evidence, DNA samples available to look into from that perspective. Just speculating on how these two cases will unfold, the criminal investigation and the civil case. The fact that the police didn't pursue an investigation in 2009 would be troubling for Mayorga's team. Also, the fact that judges in civil cases are uncomfortable in overturning settlements that have been made with an attorney. At the time, Mayorga had an attorney representing her, but she dismissed her. She said she was incompetent. So there are kind of worrying aspects for Mayorga's side of the story. And we know with these rape allegations, they're very difficult to prosecute, and if they do end up in court cases.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much for joining us from Madrid with that troubling story, and we'll follow it as it develops.